Good morning, everyone. Airball. Oh, man. It's been a rough morning. Allergies. Technical, stuff here. I hope you're all doing well. I'm going to get this hairball out. We usually start off with something funny. Today, perhaps, definitely, we're going to hear from someone who is funny. But this isn't funny. Dare I say, it might be inspirational. Check it out.
This message is mainly for artists, but I suppose it probably could apply to just about anyone. I spent my whole life chasing after some sort of career in the arts. And when you're 20 years old, you imagine that by like 25, you will be set, you will have figured everything out, you'll be rich, whatever. And that doesn't really happen for very few people. For me, I sort of went into many years of what I now see as panic and desperation, although at the time I couldn't identify it as that because that would also be weakness. But I started changing myself because I was like, oh, it's not working. I'm putting all this effort into it and it's not working. So I'd start to alter like, oh, people seem to want more of this. So I would become that, or I would sort of morph my art into what I thought more people would enjoy, sort of like trying to chase down likability or something. And I did that for a long time. And I remember I was getting close to turning 40. And in the first part of your life, I think 40 is like the last exit. Like after that, nothing happens, right? I was about to turn 40 and I was living out of my car with no savings or health insurance. And I thought, I have become the man I feared I would become. And around that time, I quit. It felt so heavy. I'd spent so many years chasing and changing myself, and it just never worked. And I just accepted my fate. It didn't work. And I was tired, and it felt terrible. I was just exhausted with myself. So I decided to try and live differently. And surprisingly, life kept going. I just started living without expectation and completely not caring what other people wanted out of me because that never worked anyway. But I was still an artist, so I kept creating, but this time without really any expectation or thought if people were gonna like it or not. And somehow I started creating the best work of my life. And people started responding to the authenticity, I think. And suddenly here I am on TikTok, finding a new audience, the biggest audience I've ever had. And many of you have said it to me, but I already know. I'm just moving through the world without expectation or the burden of trying to be what people want me to be. You might be moving through the world concerned with the burden of other people's expectation. Don't do it.
So that was Kevin James Thornton. I saw that video this morning. And some of you may wonder, what's Andy doing but when he's not blogging or doing this show or doing another show or being on other people's shows or working like my job? I spend part of that time contacting people, sending emails, messages, trying to get them as guests on this show. If you look at the catalog of people I've had on the show, Professor Alan Lichtman, W. Kamau Bell, Howie Hawkins from the Green Party, presidential candidate. There's just a ton of people who come through here. And you may ask how, John Loftus, right? Atheist, author. So people within the movement, within the atheist movement, and people outside of the atheist movement too. So how do I get those people? I actually, for every 10 invites I send out, I might get 2 responses. Maybe. So you can just see that I just send out invites quite a bit. I could tell you about who hasn't agreed to come on the show because I'm either not paying them. Yeah, people come on shows because they get paid. I don't do that because I'm poor. And Kevin James Thornton, I was on his website. He's a filmmaker, runs a podcast himself, of course, and has a couple of movies on Amazon. And so he is someone I sent out a quick email today to see if he would come on the channel and just talk about his art, his experiences, because, these stories intrigue me. Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck, he blew up a couple of years ago from having a video. But the thing is, Trey was working as an artist, as a comedian for years before he blew up, before he became popular. And so these overnight successes typically have already put 10 years in, give or take, before they become super popular. And in Kevin's case, he put in a lot of work before hitting it, before getting a super large fan base. So I thought he would be a great guest to come on. So that's just one of the things I do in my pastime. For those of you who are members or patrons, that's part of what your money goes to, is me just contacting people and trying to get high quality guests, and not just within, like I said, just not within the community, but outside of the community too. So I think I should say hello to everyone. I've been talking for like 6 minutes. There's also, I guess we're supposed to be doing news. What are we talking about? COVID, man-made or not? Atheists supporting marijuana more than our religious friends and neighbors. New poll out, by the way, on that. White supremacy. Can we? I guess this is the United States of America. We can't do a show without talking about evangelicals and white supremacy. And Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're also going to talk about insane climate crisis stuff. There's because the permafrost is, and I'm going to give it away. I'm just going to tease it right now. Because the permafrost is freezing, some companies, when they're drilling up in the Arctic or in very cold climates, actually have to freeze the ground around the drills so that it can work, so that they can actually do drilling, because it's so warm now. Nutty story. We're going to cover that. Good morning, everyone. Oh, look, I just did something and now I'm back. Wonderful. I hope everyone's doing well. I did link to my newest story from my blog, Laughing in Disbelief. It was a little satirical piece about Mike Lindell getting tossed out of Bed Bath & Beyond. Of course, Mike Lindell recently got tossed out of the Republican Governors Association meeting. One single tear from Mike Lindell, our favorite pillow fascist. I don't know if there are other pillow fascists, to tell you the truth, but right now I think it's safe to say he is the number one pillow fascist. So I wrote a piece about him getting tossed out of Bed Bath & Beyond based on the fact that he was effectively disinvited from the Republican Governors Association meeting conference. All right, now it's time for me to say hello to everyone in the chat. Jessi Bear, first person here. There should be a prize, to tell you the truth, for the first person to show up. I don't know what the prize would be. But there should be some kind of prize. 5 points. 5 points right there to Jessi Bear, being first person. What's up, John Hudson? Hope you're doing well today. And Rage, the Rage. Thank you, Rage, for pointing out that my stupid meat brain in my head scheduled the after party at 9:00. I can't run two shows at the same time. I can't run the Disappointed Cat morning show and the after party for this show at the same time. So Rage was kind enough to let me know in the chat, Andy, pull your head out of your butt. So I rescheduled, of course, the after party for 10. So that's 10:00, everyone. If you want to come in and join us, there's a link in the description. Dr. Mordecai, glad to see. Oh, do I need 10 more cats? Funny thing about cats, the girlfriend just built a cat tower, right? And it's a Bonnie cat tower, using my poorly poor Scottish accent there. It's a really super cat tower. There's like a little cat bapping toy. There are multiple levels, and the cat has not put one paw on this thing. hasn't even really explored it whatsoever. The cat loves running up and down these stairs. Well, we're on 3 stories. There's 3 stories to the place that we live in. And so the cat loves running up and down the stairs when we are going up and down the stairs. But she has not put a paw on this thing that the girlfriend bought and built for her. Simply Secular Dave. Good morning. Willie Ignorant. Hey, I don't think Mrs. Green likes cats. I don't think Mrs. Green likes cats. Jess M. And Brainbug. Always good to see Brainbug. Brainbug always elevates the show here, right? Tobin Templeman. Glad to see you here, sir. I think I got everyone. Bonnie. Bonnie is somewhere. Lee. Hello. And B. Always great to have B. Doing Atheist Drinking Out Loud, of course, this weekend. Tomorrow? Atheist Drinking Out Loud. Yeah, I should really talk to my co-drinkers to make sure we're on point for that. Did you like the thumbnail I did for the show? I'm playing around with thumbnails. So I thought Marjorie Taylor Greene with annoyed cats around her. I thought that was pretty, I'm playing around with thumbnails. Some people don't realize that in Canada, sometimes when we are waiting for weather to move products or build things, we are waiting for northern swamps to freeze over. Interesting. Well, there's a story. There's a video I'm going to share about that. I actually did. The box that that this cat castle came in, the cat monument came in, very thin box. So the cat can't actually get in there. All right. Hey, Dr. Osiris. Actually, you're coming at an ideal time because I'm apparently just running my mouth. It's already 12 minutes into the show, and we haven't even gotten to memes. Let's do memes before we get into the news cycle, everyone. Dun, 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 dun. I only have one meme today. I only have one meme. But it's a good one. I would be smiling too if I investigated myself after committing a horrendous crime. You could put a priest in there, and I think it would work just as well. It would work just as well. But this spoke to me, everyone. This spoke to me, especially since there's been, we've been covering all these horrendous stories about police brutality on the show for the last week. Well, we've been doing it since we started, to tell you the truth. But I'm happy to say that there is no horrendous police stories on the show today. So that's positive. And so I investigated myself and I'm innocent. Fantastic. All right. That's, I want to start off the show, the news, with marijuana. Is that okay with everyone? Is that okay with you, microphone, that I start off the show with marijuana? Let's start off the show with marijuana, right? New study. Atheists are much more likely to back marijuana legalization than Christians are. New poll finds. Who would have thought that atheists are pro marijuana much more than our religious neighbors, friends, country people? Religious people are significantly less likely to support legalizing marijuana compared to those who identify as atheists and other religiously unaffiliated groups, a new polling analysis from the Pew Research Center found. While most surveys on the issue took a look at key demographics like political party affiliation, age, and race, this latest report reveals a prominent schism between people of various Christian faiths and those who are atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. Nothing in particular. Does that, and I'm confused about this, chat. Maybe you can help me. If there's going to be like 3 categories of non-believers, there's atheists. All right, I understand atheists. I understand agnostics, kind of, sort of, and nothing in particular. Nothing in particular, just people who haven't thought about it a whole lot. Maybe. Overall, 60% of Americans favor legalizing cannabis for both medical and recreational purposes based on Pew's latest national survey. And a combined 91% say it should be legal for either medical or recreational purposes. Religiously affiliated people overall are less inclined to back fully ending prohibition, though still with a majority of 54%. The group least likely to favor adult use legalization, and this is going to be a surprise to all of you, I'm sure, is white evangelical Protestants, 44%. And the most likely supporters are black Protestants, 63%. 53% of Catholics are on board with legalizing cannabis across the board, though white members of the denomination are more likely to support the policy change than Hispanic ones. You're going to ask me, is there a graph? Is there a chart that maybe you have? Yes, there is a chart here, everyone. And did I put the links in the description today? Oh, I hope I did. Maybe I didn't. I'm going to check. Yes, there is actually a link to this story in the description in case you want to take a look at the chart close up. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this on your screen. But you can see basically the chart. Among U.S. religious groups, atheists and agnostics are most likely to support legal marijuana. And there you see the religiously unaffiliated, most of us, right, who are watching right now. Atheists are 88% for medical and recreational use, 7% legal for medical use only, and 4% not legal at all. I want to talk to those atheists, actually, who are not for any type of legalization for marijuana, just because I don't understand. I'm curious about their reasoning. And surprisingly, the agnostics are kind of shaming us, everyone. All right, so if you look down there, the agnostics are somewhat shaming us. Only 1% of agnostics, self-identifying agnostics, say that they're not for legalization at all. And you can see, the white evangelicals not down. They're not, unsurprisingly, right? They're not really in favor of legalization at all. Once again, I'd love to keep the chart up for a while, but the links are in the description. We should go on to the next panel, to the next slide. Let's see. Here we go. We just covered that. And what about this one? In contrast, 76% of religious unaffiliated people support legalizing both recreational and medical marijuana. That includes 88% of atheists, 86% of agnostics, and 70% of those who believe in nothing in particular. I'm still confused about that. Only 1% of agnostics feel cannabis shouldn't be legal for medical or recreational use. It's worth noting, however, that while most Christians are less inclined to back legalization compared to non-religious people, a majority of each group surveyed, with the exception of white evangelicals, still support ending prohibition. It's almost as if white evangelicals are what? I can say it now. Fucking problem. It's like white evangelicals are a fucking problem, right? Because we've seen the wonders of legalizing marijuana, right? States are getting tons of money. Some municipalities are using tax revenues from marijuana for reparations. That's incredible. That's a step forward. Here we go. For example, among white evangelicals who say they attend religious services at least weekly, 29% favor marijuana for both medical and recreational use, compared with 64% of evangelicals who attend services less often, the analysis says. So in other words, if you go to church more often, there's a far greater chance of you not supporting legalization. Black Protestants also are starkly divided by church attendance. 47% of those who attend services weekly or more support broadly legal marijuana, compared to with more than 3/4 who go less often. People who are defined as most religious, meaning they attend church frequently, pray often, and say religion is very important to them are among the least likely to favor adult use legalization. Let me say this again for the folks in the back. People who define themselves, that's how they define themselves. Well, I guess for the sake of this survey, they most religious for the survey, meaning that they attend church frequently, pray often, and say religion is very important to them, are among the least likely to favor adult use legalization. 39 comments in the chat. I think I should at least take a look over there, shouldn't I, everyone? Oh, marijuana brings, oh, hey, the devil's lettuce. Indeed, Rage. Indeed. Oh, this is an update. I just saw the update about this wonderful cat, cat edifice, this cat playground that the girlfriend built, and she's trying to use cat treats to spark interest, but the cat's not having it. All right. Counting down, seeing how everyone's doing. B, how much did they waste on that study? And okay, so it does show what many of us know, that white evangelicals are a problem, that the more that you go to church, the more of a problem you're likely to be, and that atheists and agnostics, and as long as you're not believing in a God, I suppose, that you're much more in favor of legalization of marijuana. All right. Simply Secular Dave, again, helping out with the cat maintenance there. See, now this is good, Jessi Bear. Those atheists who say that they didn't support legalization of medical or recreational marijuana, Jessi Bear says that 4% was high and misunderstood the question. That's a real possibility, to tell you the truth. That's a real possibility, Jessi Bear. 5, they are waiting for recreational cocaine. There are some countries out there that don't have prohibition. I believe Portugal, the last time I heard Portugal, everything is completely free. I'm not free, but it's legal, right? Good point, Brain Bug. 4% of those people, the atheists who don't support legalization, are still victims of reefer madness. All right. So yes, evangelicals are party poopers. Oh yeah. I don't imbibe anymore because it started messing my head up, to tell you the truth. But I've been supporting legalization since back in the 90s. There's a Freedom Festival every year in Boston, right around when the college students come back. And I remember passing out flyers in supporting legalization like in 1995 or so. You said free, no takebacks. I know, Brain Bug. I know. All right, so let's do the next. I thought I would open up with a positive story like that about atheists more likely to support legalization of cannabis in comparison to our religious associates, citizens here. COVID, man-made, or just from animals? Here we go. The story, COVID origin, why the Wuhan lab leak theory is being taken seriously. This is a synopsis of the story, of course. The link to the full story, I believe, is in the description. What is the lab leak theory, in case you haven't already heard this? It's a suspicion that COVID may have escaped accidentally or otherwise from a laboratory in the central city of Wuhan, where the virus was first recorded. Its supporters point to the presence of major biological research facilities in the city. The Wuhan Institute of Virology has been studying coronaviruses in bats for a decade. The lab is located just a few kilometers from the Hunan, I don't know, man. I'm trying to pronounce this correctly. Wet market where the first cluster of infections emerged. The problem is that, of course, Donald J. Trump, when he was president, the crook in chief, right? The citizen Trump, hopefully soon to be prisoner Trump, he pushed this narrative to help further his political ends, to stir up xenophobia. The man's a racist, and he energizes his base this way. However, regardless of that, possibly, there was a lab accident. Let's take a look at this map. You see the Hunan, oh man, I'm sorry for mispronouncing this, seafood market right over there, and the Institute of Virology fairly close together. This is in the city of Wuhan. And for those of you who don't know where China is in the map, the BBC provided, hey, this is China up here in the left corner. For those of you who don't know where China is. I know everyone on this channel knows where China is. So why has it come up again? Because reports swirling around U.S. media have raised fresh concerns over the lab leak theory, and some scientists who were once skeptical of the idea have expressed fresh openness to it. A classified U.S. intelligence report saying 3 researchers at the Wuhan lab were treated in hospital on November 2019, just before the virus began infecting citizens in humans in the city, began circulating in U.S. media this week. I heard on NPR that there were 3 intelligence reports given to President Biden of low to moderate reliability, that 2 stated that the virus was just naturally occurring, and 1 stated it got leaked out of the weapons, the research plant, the research facility. Story continues, but it was reported the Biden administration had shut down the U.S. State Department investigation set up by Trump to investigate the lab leak theory. The possibility certainly exists, and I'm totally in favor of a full investigation of whether that could have happened. Anthony Fauci, President Biden's chief medical officer advisor, told the U.S. Senate on the 11th of May. President Biden now says he's asked for a report on the origins of COVID-19 after taking office, including whether it emerged from human contact with an infected animal or from a lab accident. Lab accidents do happen. I remember watching a documentary, and like a legitimate documentary too, mind you, not like reality series documentary that aren't real documentaries. And I've mentioned this before on the show about the Russians when it was the Soviet era. They had a research facility in the Caspian Sea. And forgive me if you've heard this story before, but one scientist was holding a needle full of the toxin, the environment, the deadly toxin, while the other lab assistant was holding an owl. Well, you may not know this, but owls don't like to be held. So the owl was moving, and the scientist didn't jab the owl. It jabbed the lab assistant. And that lab assistant didn't make it. So accidents do happen. I was also talking to a buddy of mine. This is back in the day. He works for the CDC, and he was in Kinshasa. I think I'm pronouncing that right. A major city in Congo. And he was just walking around, and he found Ebola, not locked up, like vials or containers of Ebola, not locked up, not properly put away. So things do happen. Is there another theory? Yes. And it's called the natural origin theory. This argues that the virus spread naturally from animals without the involvement of any scientists or laboratories. Supporters of the natural origin hypothesis say COVID-19 emerged in bats and then jumped into humans, most likely through another animal or intermediary host. If the zoonotic theory is proved correct, it could affect such activities as farming and wildlife exploitation. In Denmark, fears about the spread of the virus through mink farming led to millions of mink being killed. But there are also big implications for scientific research and international trade if theories related to laboratory leak or frozen food chains are confirmed. I think there's a few lessons, regardless, that we can take away. One, well, you know what? I'm just going to go with the chat first. I'm going to see what's in the chat because there are really smart people in the chat, and they may know more about this than I do. All right. So just catching up with everyone. Now, this is from the last story about marijuana. James Henry is talking about Portugal. User amounts, if you carry user amounts in Portugal, are not a problem, but kilos will send you to jail for years in Portugal. That's good to know, James Henry. Thank you. Okay, Russia. Am I caught up with everything? I think I am. All right. Okay. There we go. Halftime show, everyone. It's already half minute. It's already 30 minutes in, right? It's already half an hour into the show. Don't forget, we do the show until 9:55. Until 9:55, I take 5 minutes off, and then we do the after party after show. Link is in the description. Let's do something funny. Okay, the first video I showed, like I said, not exactly funny, but inspirational. This is just going to be funny. Hopefully you're going to find it funny. I found it humorous.
What seems to be the trouble? There's a riot in Champaran? Oh, those damn rabble-rousers. I'm not too fond of this Gandhi character. The Prussians have no right to East Africa. We were here first. My goodness, Alistair. This ivory is quite illustrious. Oh, it's impossible to find a good rickshaw in this city. The Siamese are quite an industrious people. Oh, Margaret, we'll build a school here for the tribesmen. Teach them table manners, the Holy Trinity. We are quite progressive.
Colonialism. Shout out to my British friends there. Simply Secular Dave says, I do not believe that COVID-19 was generated in a lab. It is way easier for that to happen naturally in an area already known for previous COVID infections in animals than is to modify it in a lab. Good point, Dave. Good point. All right, what's the next story we're going to talk about? All right, we can talk about the KKK or Marjorie Taylor Greene. Believe it or not, they are two different stories, everyone. You may say, wow, the KKK and Marjorie Taylor Greene could be part of the same story, Andy Hall. And maybe they're the same in a theme, in a larger tale. But they are, for our purposes, two different stories. So let's take a look. I'm going to go with the KKK first, everyone. Death. All right. Nothing really crazy. Okay, there's some violence. We're adults here, right? We're adults. So, as soon as I say it's going to be a story about the KKK, you can expect to see what happens. There's going to be a lot of stuff about people like this guy, right? Angry, not that bright, willing to be violent. All right, so let's get into the story. Death threats in the KKK inside a Black Alabamans fight to remove a Confederate statue. This is from Reuters. Ever since Camille Bennett started her campaign to relocate a Confederate statue from outside the county courthouse in her hometown of Florence, Alabama, she has seen it all: threats, violent online messages, and intimidation attempts. There was a suggestion from a white pastor that somebody wire her mouth shut. Then there was a time a white motorcyclist sped towards her and her two boys during a racial justice march last summer, telling her to get the F out of the way. Bennett has always received pushback for her activism in her small conservative community, but she says her most harrowing experience happened in 2017 when 5 Ku Klux Klansmen in hoods and robes heckled her at a local park during an LGBT pride event she'd been asked to address. So this woman, she's doing the right thing. She's trying to get rid of this statue, trying to move it at least out of the courthouse. And she's getting a lot of crap for it in Alabama, this small town. But Lauderdale County Commission's 5 members, all white Republican men, refused to move the monument, citing a 2017 state law prohibiting the removal or relocation of monuments. That law is part of a larger effort by GOP lawmakers in several states, including Georgia and West Virginia, to prevent the removal of statues following a nationwide movement to topple Confederate monuments. The Republican-backed bill passed in the Alabama legislature despite the opposition of legislators such as Thomas Jackson of Thomasville, a Black Democrat, who spoke of what Confederate statues symbolize for Black Americans. My people suffered, Jackson said during a debate on the proposal. Don't bring back those hard memories that we went through so much to overcome. Indeed. As many of you know, Many Confederate monuments were erected well after the war. Florence's statue was completed in 1903 after Reconstruction, and then white Southern segregationists were working to reverse black political and economic gains. The monuments have long been symbolic for white supremacists like the KKK, which was founded by Confederate veterans. Nathan Bedford Forrest, I'm looking at you over there. He founded the KKK, by the way. The county turned down, so yes. So initially, Bennett, she had a proposal to erect next to the Confederate monument a statue of Dred Scott, who lived in Florence for 10 years since 1800s and whose effort as an enslaved man to gain freedom led to the landmark Supreme Court ruling. After her proposal was rejected, Bennett called for relocating the Confederate statue called Eternal Vigil to a Confederate cemetery less than a mile from a courthouse. This is what a bunch of dickbags this city is, or at least the city council. She wanted just to put a statue of Dred Scott next to their effing Confederate statue named Eternal Vigil, and she got voted down for that. So she said, fine, you don't want a Dred Scott monument. Why don't we just move your shitty statue over to the Confederate cemetery, which makes sense. But the bag of dicks didn't want it, the collective bag of dicks, everyone. It just wasn't one bag of dicks. It was the bag of dicks on the city council, the Republican men who are on the city council. In October 2020, Florence City Council unanimously passed a resolution backing the relocation of the statue to the cemetery, citing concerned citizens who want to be relocated. Okay, so I can't really be crapping on the city council too much because it was, let me continue, who want it relocated and the fact that some residents had agreed to pay the cost of the removal. The city built a concrete base on the cemetery for the statue, but because the statue sits on county property, the city asked for the county for permission to move it. Danny Pettis, who is white and chairs the county commission, told Reuters he would never support the statue's relocation, citing the 2017 state monument preservation law. Violating the law could result in a $25,000 line. I think we could get $25,000. I think we could raise $25,000 to pay the fine to get this thing moved. I don't think that's a big thing at all, to tell you the truth. All right. I'm going to get to, okay. Basically, that's where it is right now. It is frozen. There's a lawsuit going on between the activists, between the community and the county, trying to get this Eternal Vigil statue moved from the county courthouse to the Confederate cemetery. And mind you, once again, this is after the only thing this woman wanted was to have Dred Scott. Initially, she wanted a Dred Scott statue placed next to this Confederate monument. And that's when the city council said, no, we're not going to do that. The city council wanted then to move the monument, the Confederate monument, over to the Confederate cemetery. And then the county said no. And this is all because of state legislatures passing laws stating that you cannot move Confederate monuments. I hope I made that clear to everyone because it can be kind of confusing. It could be a miasma. It could be confusing. Well, Jessi Bear, I'm not an advocate of political violence or at least the destruction of hate symbols by concerned citizens. I'm not officially an advocate, right? But if it happened, I wouldn't be crying about it. And maybe it's the right thing to do, blowing up monuments of Confederate soldiers. The one thing I can say, and I'm going to put on my masshole hat, is that every single Civil War monument here is of the good guys winning. In actuality, if you come to Boston, the city just renovated the monument for the 54th Infantry Regiment. I believe it's the regiment. It's the 54th that you saw in the movie Glory, all black volunteers who fought in the Civil War. And actually, I may want to go down there this weekend to check it out because supposedly they did a really nice job with it. And that's right by the State House in case you're ever in Boston. It's worth seeing. What's up, Sammy? All right. I'm checking out the chat. Okay, so thank you, Brainbug. Well, this is going back to the COVID issue again. There are genetic markers that you can see in synthetic viruses. The consensus among experts say it's zoonotic. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Brainbug. Zoonotic. And that's what I remember hearing when Trump started saying that it was a man-made virus, is that there are ways to figure out whether or not the virus was man-made or not. And at the time, and I remember saying it on the show, that more than likely it is naturally created. It was not created, but just, should I use the word evolved? Evolved. All right. I think I got everyone up to speed. I think I'm up to speed with the chat. Like I said, I like reading the chat because there's clarifications of the points made in these articles. Well, here it is. Brainbug says the only monument in my hometown is a Confederate monument, and it's right in front of the courthouse. That would burn me. That would, yeah. Wow. And let's say, and I want to say again, I'm absolutely not supportive of people blowing up monuments of racists at all. Dave, once again, reminds me that if it wasn't for you guys reminding me, Andy, you should really ask people to hit the like button and subscribe and hit the bell. I would just forget because I'm so much trying to get these stories straight and try to be funny while I'm doing it. Jessi Bear, I have trouble going past Catholic churches sometimes. I have trouble going past, sometimes I just go through a mini rant, right? I'm glad that I live in the North. I wouldn't be able to deal with all that BS. Yeah, I'd have issues. What's the next story? All right, so I kind of lied, everyone. I said that the Marjorie Taylor Greene story didn't really have anything to do with the KKK. Or maybe it has something to do with monuments. But you know what? Let's talk about the oil companies before we get to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's talk about how it's so crazy. I'm just going to let the video speak for itself, and let's do that. Oh man, what did I do? You're gonna have to watch me wrestle with technology for a second or two. All right, that looks good. I look presentable. Let's hit the play button.
The administration has set a target of cutting U.S. carbon emissions in half by the year 2030. It's both an extremely ambitious target in the context of America and about the bare minimum necessary to do our part under the Paris Climate Agreement, to try to stop the planet from getting 2 degrees Celsius hotter than it was back in the 19th century. Of course, just about every other country in the world has their own emissions targets, and targets are good. We like targets. The problem is no one is hitting those targets. And fossil fuel companies have been going around telling their investors, perish maris, don't worry. The targets are all BS anyway, and we'll keep pumping carbon out of the ground for energy well into the future. Here's a case in point in Alaska, where the Biden administration is defending a huge Trump-era oil and gas project in the North Slope of that state. It's designed to produce more than 100,000 barrels of oil a day for the next 30 years. This, despite President Biden's pledge to pivot the country away from fossil fuels. The administration is fighting for a multi-billion-dollar plan from ConocoPhillips to drill in part of the National Petroleum Reserve that was approved by the Trump administration late last year. Now, how crazy is it to keep drilling like this? This is how crazy. In a paradox worthy of Kafka, ConocoPhillips plans to install chillers into the permafrost, which is fast melting because of climate change, to keep it solid enough to support the equipment to drill for oil, the burning of which will continue to worsen ice melt.
All right. Let's just put a pin in that for a second and just talk about how crazy that is. So we're drilling into the permafrost, but the problem is that the permafrost isn't really perma-ing anymore. It's not permanent. The permafrost isn't permanent. So oil companies have to put in chillers to make sure that the ground is hard enough so that we can drill. All right, Homo sapiens, we can drill down there to get oil up so that we can create more greenhouse gases, so that the permafrost will melt faster. And that means there'll be maybe more. You can see what's going on here. And typically I don't like it when people use the term Kafka-esque, because it's overused. It's played out, everyone. Right? Except when I use it. But it took me a couple of times to really wrap my mind around it. So they're drilling into the permafrost, and they need to put chillers in there to make sure that the ground around the drill, around the structure, is solid enough for it to stand. It's all right. So this story, it isn't all negative, but that was like the high point of crazy. There's some hope here, everyone. So let me just go back to the story. All right, I just had to highlight that part.
Yeah, you get all that? Did your brain just break?
Yes.
Put another way, there is literally nothing that will get oil, gas, and coal companies from stopping extraction other than going out of business, which is happening to a lot of coal companies particularly, or some kind of binding legal order to cut it out, stop. And on that score, enter the Netherlands. Yesterday, a Dutch court ruled that the Royal Dutch Shell company helped drive climate change, fact check true, and they ordered the company to cut its own CO2 emissions, as well as from its suppliers and customers, by a net 45% by the end of 2030 compared to 2019 levels. Now, Shell says they will appeal. But this is a landmark ruling. This is the first of its kind. I mean, other courts in the EU have issued rulings that have bound governments to be more aggressive in emission targets or controls. But this is the first court order that gives a specific legally binding emissions target to a fossil fuel company. A lawsuit brought by Friends of the Earth Netherlands, among others, may be the first of many that use courts to provide the sticks necessary to get companies and countries on track to keep their Paris promises. And it can't happen fast enough, because right now, there are a lot of carrots out there, okay, that are working well in climate policy, and they're encouraging and they're great. There's incentives for clean energy conversion, big investments in technological chains that are making buildings more energy efficient, and non-carbon fuel cheaper and cheaper and cheaper by the day. The infrastructure bill has these huge climate investments to make the Paris targets. $100 billion in funding to update the country's electric grid and make it more resilient to worsening climate disasters, and $174 billion in spending to boost the electric vehicle market, shift away from fossil fuel powered cars. The problem, though, is, again, the Paris Climate Agreement is non-binding, okay? And every country has their own set of reasons to miss the targets. They've all got their own Joe Manchins or their own Mitch McConnells or whatever. So there are carrots out there, but we got a real lack of sticks. And now an EU court has busted out a stick.
All right. There we go. That was the roller coaster. That was the 3-minute roller coaster. That is that piece. That is that article. That is the video. Yeah. Praise the fictitious Lord, right? Hopefully there will be more courts forcing private companies to behave themselves. And that's why it's so important, once again, to have a progressive, liberal government here in the United States of America, not only for the federal government, for states too. I'm going to check out the chat. Well, yes. The chillers, I know someone said this, it might have been Dave in the chat, that the chillers that they're using to keep the permafrost cold and probably run on fossil fuels too. It might have been Brainbug or Dave, I'm not sure. And fossil fuels, you're right, James Henry. It is not the future. Definitely not. That's right. Here we go. The chillers probably work on fossil fuels as well. Hey, Rage, hope you're feeling okay. Hope you're doing okay. I know you streamed earlier today. Didn't get a chance to see it because I was doing my thing, getting ready for this show. But I hope you're doing well. Take care. James Henry sells, Shell has polluted the soil of the Niger Delta in Nigeria. Yep. The soil has become so contaminated that farmers cannot grow crops. Yeah. And yes, I'll just say that. I could talk about extremism, Islamic fundamentalism in the Niger Delta too. But we still have a story to cover, everyone. We still have a story to cover about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to have to do this quickly. You might have already heard it. Newly resurfaced video shows Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she opposed removing statues of Hitler and Satan so she could teach people, quote, what they did. Okay, I'm going to make it official right now. You may not know this, but I support Satan. Good guy, Satan. As all of us know, God has killed more people in the Bible than Satan has. Friendly Atheist has a great video, 2.5-hour video, showing how many people God killed in the Bible and why. And let's take a look at the article, everyone. I have like 4 minutes to do this story. Video shows Greene telling a meeting she wouldn't remove. Should I do a trigger warning whenever I show that woman's face? Should I do a trigger warning? Freaks me out. Video shows Taylor Greene telling a meeting she wouldn't have removed hypothetical statues of Hitler or Satan. She said statues should remain to preserve history's lessons, even if she disagreed with them. The 2020 video emerged after she compared U.S. public health measures to Nazis' treatment of Jews, which we covered on this show a day ago, 2 days ago. Newly resurfaced video shows Greene saying she would defend statues of Hitler or Satan himself on the grounds of preserving history and its lessons. That's a lie. I'm going to say right now that she is not in favor of the Baphomet statue, right? We know that the Satanic Temple is in the middle of a court battle about getting the Baphomet statue up. I believe it's in Arkansas, right? I doubt she's in favor of that. Greene made the comments at a meeting of Dalton City Council in Georgia last June, days after she finished her first GOP primary and was poised to win the race. The city was debating the fate of a statue of a Confederate General Joseph Johnston, loser, following racial justice protests and the murder of George Floyd. Whether I see a statue, that may be something that I would fully disagree with, like Adolf Hitler, or maybe a statue of Satan himself. I would not want to say, take it down, she told the committee. It's so that I could tell my children and teach others about who these people are and what they did and what they may be about. So she would be in favor of a majestic statue of Adolf Hitler. Let's say it's a 20-foot statue of him looking eastward, going Lebensraum, Deutschland über alles. And she'd be like, yeah, we should keep that majestic monument. That's what she's saying. Let's see. The renewed attention came after Greene compared COVID-19 protocols to the treatment of Jewish people in Nazi Germany, prompting condemnations from figures from GOP House leaders to the official Auschwitz Museum and Memorial. Greene most recently commented on a Tennessee grocery store that said it would allow employees to go without a mask if they wore a badge with a logo indicating that they've been vaccinated. She tweeted in response, "Vaccinated employees get a vaccination logo just like the Nazis forced Jewish people to wear a gold star." She later doubled down on the observations, saying she only meant discrimination against Jews in the early Nazi years and not during the Holocaust. Oh, my fictitious God. I didn't think my brain could break. Again, twice in one show. First, the chillers in the permafrost and Marjorie Taylor Greene. That woman is just one train car, many train cars of crazy. Oh, yeah, Sammy Jenkins. Satan wouldn't want MTG, so not at all. Right, James Henry? It's... Yeah, if you haven't heard the story before, it is pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy. All right. Is this I think we did everything today. What did we do? We covered about COVID, man-made or not, atheists being in support of marijuana. Woohoo! Yay, atheists and agnostics. Activists in Alabama trying to get a Confederate statue moved It's called The Eternal Vigil. We covered that. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene and fossil fuels, the shit cannery, the shittery that goes on with the fossil fuel industry. It is good to note that the Dutch government is making Shell oil, Shell fossil fuels, the Shell organization, limit its carbon emissions. So that is possible. That is positive. After party, after show at 10 o'clock, everyone. Is there a funny video? I think we're going to, yep, funny video. Here it comes.
Reason you should consider being a cat. Free food. Free rent. Look great with no effort. Sleep as long as you want to.
I'd like to be a cat. In certain circumstances. All right, I got to wrap things up really fast. Here's my thank you video for YouTube members and patrons. Thanks everyone for your support. I do appreciate it. Atheist Drinking Out Loud, Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Check us out.